you a reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said to the disciples, "If your sister or brother should commit some wrong against you, go and point out the error, but keep it between the two of you. If she or he listens to you, you have won a loved one back. If not, try again. But take one or two others with you, so that in every case may stand on the word of two or three. If your sister or brother refuses to listen to them, refer the matter to the church. If she or he ignores even the church, then treat that sister as a brother or a sister as you would a Gentile or a tax collector. The truth is, whatever you declare bound on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you declare loosed on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, I tell you, if two or three of you join in agreement to pray for anything whatsoever, it will be granted to you by my God. Where two or three are gathered in my name, there am I in their midst." My friends, the good news of our God. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. I invite you to all the birthdays and all the wonderful things that are happening. It's an honor to be with you. Recently, this past week, I've had the distinct honor of listening to a podcast by the head of the Department of Theology at Grand Canyon University, and his name is Dr. Jason Hiles. He said in his podcast, tragically, what we are often missing in our world today is the grace of civil discourse. He went on to say, what we have lost is our ability to dialogue with one another, to agree to disagree, and have developed as a culture into believing that one is always right and the other is always wrong. That's a tragedy, he said, which we cannot continue to live or support in our world. One of the reasons I believe that it is so true for us, is that because as Christians and as a worldwide community, I believe in many ways we have lost the art of restoration and reconciliation. If somebody always has to be right and somebody always has to be wrong, no one can ever be always right or always wrong. Right? Sometimes there's something in between. So I feel like I'm dating myself, but a little bit of Joan Rivers said, let's be honest with one another. Okay, let's just be honest. Can we talk? In as much as you and I believe the gospel when it says, where there are two or three are gathered in my name, there am I in their midst. Wherever two or three are gathered in my name, we could add, there will be conflict as well. See, so not is only God here, but conflict is as well. Jesus knew that. Jesus knew that all of us, literally all of us, I do believe, are saints in the making. And given that fact, he knew that conflict in the body of Christ would be inevitable. Jesus also grew up in an ancient Mediterranean culture that used conflict, sometimes in very deceptive ways, to gain honor at the cost of another's personhood. So Matthew's gospel, Jesus lays out a way to resolve conflict. A way that I believe is based and grounded on the fundamental tenet of his entire preaching of the good news. It's that tenet of love. Love of God and love of neighbor, remember Jesus says, is the basis of the entire law. So how do we act in love? How do we act as a community in love? How do we act as citizens of this world in love? Let me give you a hint. Minnesota nice is not the answer. Okay? Denying or stuffing the uneasiness of conflict only results in anger and resentment and fear. And if I have learned anything in my life, it is the fact that anger and resentment and fear only lead us to destroying ourselves and destroying others. Conflict really is an opportunity for grace. It's an opportunity for God to work in our lives if we allow ourselves to deal with one another in the conflict. Jesus was quite clear. You and I are human beings. We will offend one another. You can't gather two or three without having a conflict. We will, in fact, offend one another. There will be disagreements. There's going to be times and decisions with which you and I don't agree. Jesus knew that. It happened to him with the disciples, and literally we have been listening to it over the past several weeks in the gospel. All these disagreements that have been happening between Jesus and his disciples, between the disciples and themselves. Yes, there will be conflicts, and when there are, here's what you're supposed to do. Here's how we are to act in love. Go and address the person. Go and address the person between the two of you, and keep it between the two of you. If restoration happens, awesome. If restoration doesn't, then take one or two others and sit down and see if the relationship can find healing, if it can find restoration, if it can find hope. If that doesn't work, then take it to a broader audience and try again. There's something that I think many of us miss in this gospel reading. It's what Jesus says without saying it. He basically says, don't give up. Keep trying. Keep striving for love, for reconciliation, for restoration, because the work of reconciliation is not easy. Do not give up. I don't know about you, but I used to think, in fact, I was quite certain that I was taught, maybe some of you were as well, we were taught that, see if this rings a bell, that you could not approach this table unless you or I were in the state of grace, right? Anybody? Yeah, I see a couple heads shaking. Right? You had to be in the state of grace. Like, really, does anybody know what the state of grace is? And we don't have little signs that tell us, right? Like we ever knew what the state of grace is. I have really come and grown in my understanding of that and say, I really believe that all of us are in the state of grace, because the state of grace is the opportunity for God to work in our lives. The state of grace is the opportunity that God uses in our lives to bring about reconciliation and restoration and hope. So we gather each and every week around this altar, not pretending in any way to be perfect people, not somehow or some way better than anybody else in our lives or in our world, but we gather as a community of faith. We gather each and every week around this altar and in this space, elbow to elbow, arm to arm, hand in hand. And what do? We admit to ourselves and to one another that we are not perfect. We admit that we need God's grace in our lives, that we need each other in our lives, that we admit that to this table all are welcome, even with all their woundedness. And here, at that table, we reground ourselves. We reground ourselves and recommit ourselves to living our lives as best as we can possibly do. We commit ourselves to set each other free from the chains of our own sinfulness so that we can walk out those doors in hope, not in despair. It's a little known fact for most of us, but when Jesus said this, actually in Greek, I'm going to translate it for you. Whatever you declare bound on earth, and whatever you declare loosed, that in the biblical text, that's the plural perfect. In Southern, because my brother is here from San Antonio, in Southern language, I will say it like this. It means y'all. Okay? Y'all. Literally, that text means whatever you bind on earth is bound. Whatever you declare, that's us. That's not something, binding and loosing, those are not something that's reserved to the leaders of the Christian community. That's not our purview, it's our preview. It's our responsibility. We set each other free, or we hold each other bound. I wonder how we'll approach this table tonight. Maybe we can once again give birth to civil discourse. Maybe we can be instruments of restoration and reconciliation for ourselves and our families and our world. Wouldn't that be awesome?